All my work responds at some level to its surrounding. Whether the surrounding is nature in the sense of trees, gardens, the ocean, or the desert, it doesn't make any difference what it is, I'm responding to it. So all this enters into an equation, and how it comes out is what we call creativity. You must have a knowledge of, in architecture, you must have a knowledge of structures. You must have a knowledge of the human being. You must be able to get emotional. If you aren't emotional, don't be an architect. Big waste of time. I am Ed Niles. My daughter and myself built the house with the owners. The home took about 3 years to design and 2 years to build. And that was completed right about 92. The clients came to me and I began to know them more as individualists. They had real concerns about certain things. They loved nature. And we looked around to find a site that he could feel free. The variety of modules, and I use the word module here because it really has a context that makes sense. These rooms today can be unhooked and rearranged along this spine. In terms of the idea behind this, these are the upper sections where you're in the room now. This is the gallery down the middle. And these are the separate spaces that have separate air conditioning, heating, water, everything. So this, when something happens here, this whole panel hinges down and you have access to that. The structure we're in right now is this one here. That would be the module that was originally his office. And this was the bathroom module that we moved. Every module in itself is like a package that's moved and then plugged in to what's going down the middle. The bridge or the connector to the other building, that was actually designed in 5 different ways. It was plugged in over here at one time. There is a level of technology that's apparent, and usually there's a tremendous amount of visual transparency. That if I got a great mountain over there and I'm standing here and over there, I can see through and there's that mountain. There's this idea that seeing through and or being transparent is another way to place it, to me is a very important piece of what it is. Philosophically, my approach is always to be reflective of where I am at that moment in time. This is the Dmitry Vergun space. He was my structural engineer that worked with us from the very beginning. Its primary use is entertaining, hearing music, being the somewhat center of the universe here. It doesn't share itself with anything else. In fact, the kitchen is left to a very minor piece of it. But the idea is you could flow in and out. The ceiling height is 36 feet from where I'm standing. And the translucent roof system is on the orientation of the moon and the orientation of the sun. So what happens is the sun travels across the arc, and this room is continuously lit during the day. The space we're in is a suggestion of a kitchen, and the word suggestion only implies that we weren't working with a client with a great necessity or essence to be cooking all the time. So the idea was to put in a symbolic kitchen, essentially, with the normal sinks, normal refrigerators and such. But the original concept behind it was to simply have a space that one could have food delivered to. That was the lifestyle they had. They traveled quite a bit. They had many parties here, but a lot of it was set up outside. This became mainly the place for making drinks. Where we are, what is left over of the main space. This is the sitting area that normally would face into any entertainment, whether it be TV or other devices. I think the main thing it's about is you stand here and speak, you can see there's no echo at all. That was set up purposely for that, without putting acoustic tiles everywhere to try to control it. The gray, greens, and things of that nature do not replicate nature, but do not draw attention to any more than there is. You don't need color to remind you of what's going on. There's just so many pieces and parts that are coming at you in its original form. We're in a bridge that connects the main living space to all of the secondary bedrooms of the suspended upper structure. At each side of you, as you recognize, you never lose your position in time or space. You're constantly aware of the forms that are around you, especially at nighttime. Going up and down this stairs is very exciting because you're getting the glow of all the light from the upper structure going through the fiberglass system, and you're getting the light going the other way, of course, coming out of the main structure. So you're always in context with where you are in space. So you're always seeing the ocean, or you're always seeing across the court below and beyond. I've used bridges many times, depending on the nature of the project. They're very exciting. The difficulty is them, like any other piece of architecture, you've got to be mathematically correct, because normally they're brought in by crane and they have to fit perfectly. We are in it's not a hallway, really. The hallway would be enclosed. This has always been open, except for some doors that connected on his office. It's sort of the meeting place for everybody that's up here. So its main purpose is the connectivity, but without getting into a typical tailored hallway. Being up like this allowed you to really differentiate sleeping privacy from what happens on the ground plane. The ground plane being a place where there's a lot of activity, a lot of movement, people coming and going. This was a secluded area upstairs. Again, the sunlight is allowed to do the job, to light the space softly, to give it the sense that there is something outside. If at nighttime, the moon, all the other things I've said before, play into this space and give it life. This is the primary sleeping zone. It is extremely important to the house because once you've made the choice to leave the main living space below, this has to operate as a world in itself. I have to add, that's probably one of the most exciting spaces because you are immersed in the trees and the trees change. So during the wintertime, you get a lot more light in here. Well, the natural light here is obviously critical because it's part of seeing nature outside, but also you're in the air like being in an airplane. And so the ground plane disappears. And so there's a sense of flight, sense of freedom in the air because you don't see the ground at night. So what you have is that sensation of being really isolated in time and space. The balcony was critical because just being outside, being on a chair, being on a chaise lounge, or just being in the spa was a completely independent world again. But the view is sensational, especially at nighttime when you're seeing the crescent of Santa Monica and all the way around. It carries with it a lot of things that I try to replicate in many homes. This gives a chance for people to express themselves emotionally and not feel there's going to be somebody else challenging it. The space is a bathing, dressing area as part of it. Dressing is across the hall, but this space was designed so that both of them could utilize an island sink, but also gave them a lot of surface area and access. And so it's a piece of furniture, really. It's not just a counter, it's a piece of furniture that we designed that floats in this space. This is the south-facing court towards the ocean, towards the islands. This is the place where a variety of furniture types have been tested. And the sliding glass door sections are California bred. Most of these doors are normally so small it's not worth the time to even open them up. So these were big, and they were also done on rollers or stainless steel so that we didn't have a problem with corrosion. The pool was essential primarily because the owners wanted one. The other use was the fact that at nighttime, this pool would be lighted and is a great reflection piece on the site. The third item is the ability to use it as part of a heat sink for the water source heat pumps, so that instead of using energy and electricity to generate heat, we use these extrapolated from the water. And it's like something that ties itself back to the main structure in terms of what it is and how it works. Sculpture is a big part of the exterior landscape. The idea from the beginning was you can pick them up and change them after you change your mind. That dynamic was good because over the years, Milt would call me up and he'd say, I bought this new piece, you gotta come over and see it. And that really created the action on the space. I would say the home itself is unforgiving. There are no options. You're in a room or you're not in a room. You are within nature or you're not in nature, depending on the time of day. You walk from room to room and you experience different views of nature, different impacts of nature. But you also are affected by the fact that you're moving through the world at a different time of the day constantly. But being separated from nature is not the intent. The point being is that you are separated with nature automatically, whether you want to or not. And that's where the architect comes in as a translator of emotions, issues, technology, all of that into an object.